that I'm going to give during this month, I'm going to be hitting up on some very important issues. This morning, the game of sabotage. Next week, self-aggrandizement. The third week, confusion. And the fourth week, accusation. And I consider them big issues in our lives and possibly issues that we would rather avoid. And to present this issue on sabotage, I would like to read to you a portion from the book of Genesis, which involves a gentleman named Jacob, who was the twin son of a gentleman named Esau. And the story is the one of Jacob and Esau, and it's a honey of a story. You can do so much with it metaphysically in terms of interpretation. And Jacob and Esau were born to Abraham's son Isaac, the one who had been saved from being killed at the altar. And when Isaac finally gave birth to children, they were twin sons. And the way they were born was that Esau came out first. So he was the firstborn. And because he was the firstborn, according to birthright laws in the Jewish community, that son thereby gained the whole heritage of the estate. And remember that when we share these metaphysical stories and concepts, to put yourself into the story. And as I share this with you, I'd like you to think about those areas in your life where you wish you were first, but you got to be second. And how you really feel about that. And what happened was, Esau being born first, Jacob came out holding on to the heel of Esau, so Jacob happened to be born second. That's the beginning of the story. Now, as the story goes on, both boys have matured, and they grew up with Esau becoming a hunter, and Jacob being a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac, their father, loved Esau the best because he ate of his food, but Rebekah, the mother, loved Jacob. One day, when Jacob was boiling pottage, Esau came in from the field, and he was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red pottage, for I am famished." And Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright." Clever guy. And Esau said, "I'm about to die, so what use is a birthright to me?" And Jacob said to him, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he ate and drank and rose and went out. Taking it in? Interesting story. Now let's think about life. What I see happening here, and I'll continue on with the story, is that we have an incident where a person steals from somebody else. Now, just take a miniature look at steal for a moment and think about how you and I steal from others. Not anything as obvious as a birthright, but we'll steal from others their intelligence. We'll steal from others their capacities. And you know how we do that? We do that by jealousy, by knocking them down, by talking about them, by telling stories out of school, by chattering about them inside of our minds and knocking them down. Can you see that as stealing? Huh? Can you talk to me? Yeah, that is stealing. Remember, in unity, you don't have to feel bad about that. But we've done something in unity that concerns me a little bit. Because we haven't felt bad about it, we've kind of ignored it. Put it out here and forget that it takes place. So sabotage is the activity of stealing from the future, we could say. That's what Jacob is doing. He's stealing the future because he couldn't get it in the moment. And the reason that we do it is because we can't be first, or we don't want to avoid an encounter with ourselves. Do you understand that? I don't want to encounter who I really am, so I'll steal from the future or from somebody else because I'm second. Now, before I move any further with this, I'd like to address who you really are. Because in order to come through with this so that you can take a courageous look at it, I really feel I need to offer to you the essence of who you are so that you can use that and not knock down who you ain't. Who you are is the Christ. I want you to remember that. And I want you to realize that any time you have to sabotage another, you have forgotten that you are the universal Christ. And shall we go through it again? What is the universal Christ? That means that you are a pearl, that you are essence, that you are a part of the growing edge of the universe, and the growing edge of the universe is continually hungering to expand. It's always pushing through you. Our tendency is, however, when the universe attempts to push through us, through the activity of the Christ, which doesn't mean Jesus, but it's an energy and it's a power field that keeps pushing itself into us. Our tendency is when that discomfort arises for us to not want to explore it, examine it, honor it. So we attempt to fester it, and we may start stealing from others so that we do not have to look at ourselves and what our inadequacies. Folks, there are parts of me that are inadequate. I am really resentful of the whole attempt in many New Thought religions that seeks to give people so much a sense that they're perfect, that they can't honor, that they also have parts of themselves that don't work. Now, in order to address sabotage, you have to address, and I ain't always right. Sometimes I make mistakes. You might want to, as I say this to you this morning, just run it through in your mind. Can you say that to yourself? I mean, in the battles with your mate, in the battles with government, in the battles with your business, where you're sabotaging them because you can't get what you want, there has to be a looking to me of why I do that. And why I do that is because two things. I don't feel good enough about myself in order to honor what isn't good enough about myself. Did you capture that? Oh, dour faces, dour faces. Oh, forget it. I'll just go home. In order for us to honor the Christ pushing through us, we have to be willing to take off the scales of who we have been. Do you have any weaknesses? Can you admit you're second? Are there moments in your life when it's important for you to look at that person who's beating on you and say, you know, you're right. I'm wrong. Must the Christ be so strong that the only position you can take in life is to be right? If that's the case, then our religion isn't serving us. Our religion is becoming a place for us to hide our heads like ostriches. The issue, I think, with Jacob is, must you always be first? Can't you ever be second? Must we have a world of only winners? You know, we're into a philosophy lately of win-win. I'm not sure that's the case. I think we have to mature where we can not only win, but we can also lose and feel good about ourselves. If I have to make everything into a win-win position, that is a denial of the factuality of life. Sometimes you lose. Do you grunt? Do you agree? Do you have any sense of that? The way it seems to go in my life is, you know, if somebody calls me stupid, it never hurts. I don't have a problem with that. You know why? Because I know I'm not stupid. But I'll tell you, if somebody calls me not warm or loving, I get hurt. You know why? Because I don't feel quite good enough about not being warm and loving. I'm not so sure of that inside of me. You know what that is? That is the Jacob. And if I don't feel good about that, then I'm going to have to go sabotage somebody in order to feel good about it. So I'll get you and knock you down, and then I can feel up. And what I'm avoiding is encountering myself and saying, and what am I going to do about my feelings about the fact I'm not always warm and loving? There are a million things I can do about it. I don't want to walk you through all of them. I don't even have to. But it's my feelings about me feeling that way. Yes, I had an interesting experience. My roommate and I were cleaning the house. Well, she was cleaning the house. Excuse me, I better get it straight. And I was cooking in the kitchen. That's not the truth either. And she was vacuuming, and you know, we have a bird that poops all over the place, and 3 dogs, and the bird's my bird. And so as she was going through the house with a vacuum, wrapping the cord around everything in the way, you know how it is with vacuums. If there's an armchair to wrap a cord around, you wrap a cord around. If there's something, haven't any of you vacuumed recently? God. Just when you go to back up, that canister is in your way or something's in your way. Well, you know, I think she's become more and more comfortable with expressing her discomfort. So she came wandering in the kitchen, just proclaiming over the bird and the poop. It's kind of cleaned up, but you know, it isn't totally cleaned up. So when she came in, she was kind of, really frankly, she was impressed with my reaction, because I said to her, what happened was, I didn't feel second because she was angry at my bird. You know what I could do? I could say, tough luck. My life's very hard. What do you mean I have to clean up after that bird? The bird's yours too. It lives here in this house. You get some fruits from the bird too. It squawks at you too. It sings for you in the shower too, right? But what happened was, I think I was able to encounter myself, and I said, you know, that's really the truth. And I said, have you noticed the poop here and the poop here, and here a poop, there a poop, everywhere a poop poop. What I did was, and then I took some action about it, what I did was I joined in. I didn't let that make me feel uncomfortable so that I had to go get her. Can you feel that, or is it overdone and overdone? No. All right. You see, sabotage is a way of postponing encounter. What we do all day, every day. Hey, you may not like it, but we keep avoiding encountering our own habits, don't we? That's why we continue to eat sugar, continue to drink the caffeine, continue to put on weight when we don't want weight, or continue to lose weight when we really want weight. Those are the habits. That's the sabotage. And what you're doing now is you're sabotaging you. You're killing your life. We postpone our self-encounter. That's what Jacob is doing by not looking at our weaknesses. We don't want to know the truth. I swear to God, one of my weak areas in this is that if I ever have some sense that I am seriously ill, I think I probably won't go to a doctor. How many of you are afraid to go to a doctor? Yeah, you know, we don't want to face it. We don't want to know, well, maybe you're going to die. Who wants to know that? So why don't we forget this talk and go home? What we do is we put our hand over our head, you know, poor me, poor me. My mother didn't treat me good, so I can't deal with it. I got born second. I'm going to take it out on life for the rest of my life because I got born second. You know, you can't do anything about being born second. You can't do anything about the fact that your mother messed all over you. Not all the psychologizing in the world is going to clean that one up until you recognize it's time to stop sabotaging you and everybody else, including her, because she didn't do what was right by you. And who the hell knows what's right by anybody? So what we do is we go and we get others. We use gossip. We self-justify. We spend our hours perpetuating who's wrong. How often do you do that? Even in the name of clarity, even in the name of organization, we'll spend hours going over stuff of who's wrong. Whose fault is it? What happened? Why didn't it work anyway? That's all sabotage. And it's greasy, and it's easy. And you know what you do every time you sabotage? Every time you avoid encountering yourself, every time you avoid taking a look at what's going on, taking yourself to the doctor, is you hold on to an energy knot. And the energy knot is the lack of willingness to look at yourself. And when you do, it ends up becoming a boil. and it festers. And you know it festers, and you know what happens with the festering? It projects itself on every relationship there is, when all you need to say is, you know, I'm not very good in that area. Can you say that? You know, I really am stupid. I'm not so smart, and I need to tell you that. You know what happens when you tell people that? People start saying, well, you know, I'm not so smart either. They start saying, well, let me help you with that issue. And they begin to help you take a look at the areas of you that are really wonderful. You know, one of the reasons that I don't perform in public anymore on the piano, I perform in public all right, but not on the piano, is because I never overcame a basic weakness at that keyboard. You know what it is? You won't believe this, but I get absolutely petrified that I will forget the music when I'm sitting in front of the public performing. I never took care of that energy knot in my being. But you know what I learned by performing? I learned by going to my teacher that when I went and I sat down at that stool and we worked together, that I was there for one reason, for him to tell me how bad I was. I paid him to tell me how bad I was, and you know what I gained from that? I got myself out of the way of criticism. If I'd gone to him and every time he told me how I wasn't working my hands right or not relaxing properly enough, if I got me in the way, I would have killed him for telling me. That's what we do, we kill others. And of course ourselves, because we don't grow. It's all clear. You have to get yourself out of the way. Yourself, what is the self? Remember, the self is the Christ. The self is that part of you that can't be destroyed. And if you know that really well, and if you know how to serve that really well, as I suggested last week, then you can let it be exposed to criticism. You can let it be exposed to see itself for what it is. You don't have to go and steal somebody else's birthright by getting them, because you don't have what you really want or need. Now what happens is that Jacob and Esau separate. Isn't that interesting? Look at that one. Esau goes away and Jacob goes off to his life. And because they separate, that's what happens to us too. Whenever you sabotage yourself or others, you know what you do? You separate from yourself. You destroy intimacy. You know, if people get to know that what you do is deny yourself and ignore yourself and blame others, no matter how subtly you do it, if what people get to know is that you won't face the truth with them, then they're going to finally have to walk away, because they don't want to. I don't want to work through that veil with you. I don't want to have to be that clever in order to take care of your weak part. I don't even want to work in your presence, because I know you're going to finally destroy me in you. So separation, lack of intimacy, relationships, businesses, I don't care, friends, workmates, playmates. Hope you're not feeling bad. You're awfully quiet. Let's look at what happens with Jacob, because he sees it too. They separate. And this is the next important passage. You know, it looks as if there's no hope for this thing, so what do we do about it? Well, here it is in Genesis 32, verses 22 through 30. Jacob goes to Peniel, and the same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he was not able to prevail against Jacob, he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh, and Jacob's thigh was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said to him, Jacob said, "Let me go, for the day is..." No, the man said to Jacob, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And Jacob said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "Your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and you have prevailed." I think what that's talking about is the essential necessity to wrestle with yourself. You don't have to go and wrestle with the other person, but you must wrestle with yourself. You don't avoid yourself, you wrestle with yourself. What gives you the courage to wrestle with yourself is you know that you've got something wonderful within that's wanting to come forth. So you begin the wrestling. And in the wrestling process, there is that powerful game that's going on where Jacob's thigh is touched and it's put out of joint. Now, whenever you wrestle with yourself, you are going to have to come to terms with your weak area. The area that's trying to be broken through so that you can come to somebody else. And what are you coming to? You're leaving Jacob so you can become Israel. Do you know what Israel does? Israel is the name of the nation that Israel becomes because he becomes such a leader. But he has to first work through his weakness in terms of himself in order to become Israel. That's you too. You have to come to terms with yourself. You have to find out what that weak part is and wrestle with it. And you wrestle with it so that you can throw it out? No, this man says to him, not until you call me blessed. That's what Jacob says to him, will I let you go? And that's the truth. I love this principle. Not until that within you, which hurts you so much, can become blessed, can you really let it go. And the reason you let it go is because you're able to integrate it. You see, not until I feel really holy about whether it's all right for me to be loving or unloving, will my part of me that I'm wrestling with ever be released. It has to be all right for it to be both ways. Is that clear to you? That's what the wrestling is called. And when that comes clear within you, then it is wrestled out, so to say, and it takes on a new name. And where do you wrestle? Notice what he does. He sends his kids away. He sends his wife away. He sends all of his responsibilities away, and he goes off and he takes on his own self. What happened is that the boil is coming to be exposed. The uncomfortable part is being brought to the surface. The name is changed, so the old self is released. And then the very conclusion of this thing says, Jacob asks this man whom he has wrestled with, and he says, tell me, I pray, your name. But the man he wrestled with said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. I have seen God face to face, but my life is preserved. You know, there are two aspects of God. There is God, the nurturing preserver, and there is also God, the creator. And the part of God we struggle with most is God, the creator. Because God, the creator, will not let you avoid the truth of your existence. And I don't think we like that very much. If you've got a boil inside of you, you know what God's going to do? God's going to keep letting you know about it. God loves you. But God doesn't just love you when you're being terrific. God loves you when you're being all parts of you. And what God wants from you is for you to see God face to face. And that means not only your good parts, but your weak parts too. So when Jacob, now named Israel, is able to look at this boil within himself, he can say, I have seen God face to face. That means I have seen both my good side and my weak side, and seeing both, I didn't die. I'm still around. Do you realize the courage it takes to look at not your bright side, but your dark side? And to be able to bring it out into the surface and share it with others. Share it with those who are closest to you, and share it with the whole world that's around you. I'll never forget the first time when I was at Unity School starting to be a minister. And I'd been a professional teacher for 7 years by that time, and I was working with a lot of people who had never been beyond high school education. And one day in a classroom situation, I was asked a question. I looked at the person who asked the question. I said, I don't know the answer. And this was a black fellow. He hadn't had much of an education, and his ego wasn't very strong within himself. And one of the reasons was because he hadn't had an education. But when he heard me say, I don't know, he came to me after class and he said, you know, the greatest gift you gave me today was that you admitted with all of your education, you don't know everything. That gave me permission to say, I don't know. Feel it? The conclusion of the text is really wonderful. It's a beautiful scene. What you don't know in the story is that Jacob is being chased by Esau with an army. And you know, when you commit sabotage to yourself or in the face of others, you're always going to feel them coming to get you. And so Jacob has been renewed. He's been transformed. And so this time, instead of running from his enemy, he decides to turn. And when he turns, he's a new man. And so he looks out over this vast area that Esau's army is coming at him with. When he looks out, Esau apparently feels the change that's occurred in Jacob. And Jacob is able to welcome with open arms instead of fear. And so the end of the scene is these two men, full adults now, able to recognize each other for who they've been. And they run like across the field. It would make a wonderful movie. And as they run across the field, they greet each other and are able to meet each other as equals. People who know they're equals don't need sabotage. They can just meet face to face. Would you like to sing another song?